Hi friends, it's Rainy, and I am here today to talk about all of the books I read in January of 2020. I feel like I'm a little bit behind the times at this point since we are almost in the middle of February, but this was just the first time that I had to film, and in my new backdrop, I kind of like to do it when I have some natural light. Um, and today is that day. I read a lot of books in January. Most of them were fairly good. I think I gave three books 5 stars, but those 5 stars were rereads for me. um, and yeah, let's just get into it, shall we? The first book that I finished in January was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This was a reread for me, and it is the first book that we are reading for the Lord of the Rings readathon that Krista from Books and Jams and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand are hosting for the first half of the year. It has been uh, probably a good 15 years since I have read the Lord of the Rings series, and which I include The Hobbit in the Lord of the Rings series. I don't know if everybody does, but but I do. Um, and I have not read this book since I think my senior year of college. In fact, I only knew about these books from the movies when they came out. I somehow in my childhood I missed that this was a classic book series. Um, to be fair, when I was a kid, I was not really into fantasy or anything like that. But anyway, I digress. This book, though, is hands down one of my favorites of all time. I just I don't really get what I hear about people saying that it's just a long journey, because there's so much that goes on in this book during their journey. I mean, yes, it is a journey, but it's not just walking around talking. They get into a lot of scrapes, and as do the characters in the Lord of the Rings series. Um, but yeah, there's just like every chapter is some new craziness that they get into, and J.R.R. Tolkien's writing is just superb. Of course, he can be a little long-winded, of course, but I feel like if you are intimidated by the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you should definitely start with this book because it doesn't feel as long-winded. Yes, this was my first 5-star read of the year, even though it was a reread and I knew it would be 5 stars. What can you do? The second book that I read in January was Anne of Green Gables, the first in the Anne of Green Gables series. And I reread this for the Anne Along 2020 read along that is being hosted by Tia from Tia and All the Books and Amanda from The Curly Reader. And this book, I've read this several times, and I'm not sure that I have, well, I'm sure that I haven't read all of the books in the Anne of Green Gables series, but this I have read multiple times because it is just so heartwarming, so touching. It can be heartbreaking at times. If you haven't read this, I'm not going to spoil the biggest heartbreaking moment of this series, or at least of this book. But yes, it's a gorgeous novel. Follows Anne, who is an orphan who gets adopted accidentally by a brother and sister. And it's just about how they work together to form a life together, and how they all, Matthew, Marilla, and Anne, grow because of their relationships with each other. So yeah, another 5-star read. The next book I finished was Maisie Dobb by Jacqueline Winspear, and this book is the first in the Maisie Dobbs series of, well, they're mystery novels. I was going to say cozy mystery novels because that's what I thought when I first started reading this in December. But the subject matter of this is very heavy, which I should have maybe realized because it is set just after World War One and kind of the aftermath of that. But I just don't really think that I thought much of it. However, I just thought that this was a cozy and it really kind of was weighing me down in December, so I put it aside and I finally finished it in January. It is very beautifully written, and I definitely do want to move on with the series, but it's going to be a slow process for me because there was just so much sadness and heaviness in this novel, and there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of lightheartedness. There was some, but not a lot. So I think I have to be in a specific mood to be able to take these books. But I still gave it 4 stars, and it because of the beautiful writing, because of the plot, and even because of the heartfelt nature of it and the sadness, because it was really real. I just don't think that I was expecting that at the time. Oh boy. The next book that I have makes me a little bit nervous to talk about because I have a rather unpopular opinion about this book. And that book is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I did not get on with this book. Now, I realize that the subject matter in this book is very important, and it was very well handled, I thought. So I'm not knocking it for that. I'm not even knocking this book. It was very well written. It definitely has the Frederick Bachman style that I haven't read much of Frederick Bachman yet, but I read A Man Called Ove last year and really loved that. And there was a similar writing style to that book that I could tell, from book to book was Frederick Bachman, but the subject matter obviously is very, very different. And once we got to the actual main plot of this book, I enjoyed it more, but the first half of the book for me was very, very slow and honestly boring to me. I am not a sports person, and I am really not a character-driven novel person, and this one, for the first half of the book, was very hockey-focused, very character-focused, and just basically gave a lot of backstory to the characters, and I didn't care about that, I guess, which is, it's going to be unpopular, I am sure. This novel is very important, I think, for parents and teenagers to read, to discuss what there is out there. One of my criticisms, though, was I had heard a lot of people say that they felt like this showed that there was good and bad in everybody, and that it wasn't just black and white. I did not really see that much. The main character that did the crime had no gray area in my mind, and I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to see more depth in his character. So there is a second book. This is a duology. Us Against You is the second book in the series. However, I don't think I'll be moving on to that book. I've been told that if I didn't like all the hockey stuff in Beartown, that I would definitely not enjoy Us Against You. So that pretty much tells me that it wrapped up perfectly fine with me in Beartown, and I am good to go with that book. I think I was expecting something different than I got in this book. That's that. We'll stop talking about it now because I'm sure I just made a lot of people angry. The next book that I read was Little Men by Louisa May Alcott, and we are reading this for the Louisa May 2020 read-along that Kate Howe and Megan Hannett are doing for most of this year. And Little Men is the second in the Little Women trilogy, which I actually did not know that it was a series. I thought it was just one or two books. I did know about Little Men, but there is also a third one that I read in February. I'll talk about that later. Little Men, I think it was widely agreed upon with the rest of the read-along participants that it was not one of Louisa May's best. It was a lot of vignettes that focused around the boys at the school that Jo March and her husband at the end of Little Women decide to form in the house that Jo March's aunt leaves to her. And that in itself is a really fun premise, and it was fun to see the boys. And I'm sure if you have little boys, maybe you would appreciate this more, but it just felt very disjointed, and it didn't seem to have the same flow as Little Women did. And there were parts of it that were probably supposed to be the heartbreaking parts of the book, which were, but they kind of came out of the blue and weren't dwelled on very much, which I would have probably liked to have seen it coming more than I did. But, I mean, overall, it was enjoyable, but I kind of felt like it was a bit of a slog to get through. After the heaviness that was Beartown for me, I needed a palate cleanser. And so I picked up Babysitters On Board, and this is a super special that I won from a giveaway last year from Angie from Literary Labors. She gave me, I won a group of Babysitters Club books, and this was one of the super specials that was in there. I don't remember if I read this book as a child. I read a lot of the Babysitters Club books as a child, so chances are I did read this, but this was just really fun. I mean, there's not much to say about the Babysitters Club other than I felt like this one focuses on them, a bunch of the babysitters babysitting on a cruise ship that some of the parents take them on to help them watch their kids, which I kind of feel is odd, but but also they go to Disney World at the end of the cruise, and it was just funny to me to, like, parents just didn't care if all these 13-year-old and under kids ran around the cruise ship without any parental supervision. And the same thing in Disney World. They're just like, yeah, meet back here at blah, blah, blah time. And I was like, what? The oldest kid in this book is 13. But it was really fun to read about them going to Disney World, because I was there many, many years ago. And just to hear about all the different rides that even I went on that, are still, I think, still around today. Maybe not, because I was 16 when I went to Disney World, so it's been a while. It's been 20 years. So, maybe some of those aren't there, but they talk about the Peter Pan ride in this, which is like my favorite ride at Disney World. That might be kind of like sad and boring, but I really enjoy the Peter Pan ride, and apparently it's been there since the 80s at least. So yeah, this was fun. Not much to say about it. It's a Babysitters Club book. Was nice nostalgia for me. And the next book, and really the last book that I finished in January, was a reread also. And it was the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, illustrated edition. Now, the illustrated edition is not a reread for me, but Tom from Tom Reads Things decided to start a read-along of the Harry Potter series. He has never read it before, and I have only ever read the series through once. So I decided I was going to join along because I really have been interested in looking at the illustrated editions. So, which I know are not all out yet. So by the time I get to, I think, like book number 5 or 4 or 5 in the series, I won't be able to do the illustrated editions anymore. But for the first few books anyway, I want to do that. So my library had it, surprisingly. So I grabbed that and read it through in just a couple of days. I was going to try to do the thing that we all did whenever the books first came out and read them all in a day, which I probably could have done with this first book at least, because it's one of the shorter ones in the series. But at the same time, I am an adult now and I have other responsibilities than just reading through a book in a day. So, so I did not just do it in a day, but it was just really great and a really nice way to end January and a nice, just nostalgic reread, which I kind of felt like January encompassed a lot of nostalgic rereads for me. It's just been a nice way to start the year. And the last book that I'm going to talk about briefly, but that I did not finish in January, is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. And I am kind of doing a challenge for myself, and thankfully Tara from Buzzword Books is buddy reading it with me. For January and February, we are reading through this entire book. So, and I'm not going to go into it here because I am doing dedicated discussion videos for each volume of this book. There are 4 volumes and an epilogue. So I am doing a total of 4 discussion videos because I think I'm going to put the epilogue into volume 4's video. So anyway, but I will link my first 2 videos down below. And yeah, it's actually been a very enjoyable read. Now that we're into February and we have started volume 3, a little bit of a spoiler, it's becoming a little bit more of a slog. But there's so much more of it to read, so I'm sure it will pick up at some point, and I'm sure it'll be a slog again at some point. So, but for January, I really enjoyed Volume 2. Volume 1 was a little hit or miss for me. I definitely don't enjoy the war parts as much, but as like the family drama part that is also prevalent in this, which I didn't really realize before I started this book. So, yeah, but I am really enjoying it, and I hope to be able to summarize my thoughts on a 1,250 page book in February. So, stay tuned for that. All right, friends, those were all the books that I read in January. Please don't hate me for not really enjoying Beartown. It's just, the hockey stuff just really bogged it down for me. I'm sorry, I can't get into sports. So don't hate me. Still love me because I love you. So, but yes, so I hope that you all enjoyed this, and I hope that you are enjoying your February reads. And if you've read any of these books and had similar thoughts to me, I'd love some camaraderie in the not loving Beartown thing if anybody else did not enjoy it. And yeah, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, friends.